no matter how powerful they are, is above the law. We're here today to talk about the Washington Commanders. For years, the team and its owner have caused very real and very serious harm, and then lied about it to dodge accountability and to continue to rake in profits. So far, they seem to have gotten away with it, but that stops today. Today, we're filing a consumer protection lawsuit, a civil lawsuit, against Dan Snyder, the Washington Commanders, the National Football League, and the NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell for colluding to deceive residents of the District of Columbia about their investigation into a toxic workplace culture that impacted employees, especially women. All of that deception was done to protect their profits and their image. With this lawsuit, we're standing up for DC residents who were repeatedly lied to and deceived. They have a right to know the truth about the companies they support with their hard-earned dollars. The Commanders, Mr. Snyder, the National Football League, and Roger Goodell deprived them of this right. Since the fall of 2021, we've been carefully and thoroughly investigating the Washington Commanders and Mr. Snyder related to allegations of sexual harassment and workplace misconduct and the circumstances around the NFL's so-called independent investigation into these allegations. We've interviewed numerous witnesses, including former team employees who witnessed and experienced the conduct at issue. We reviewed thousands of internal documents produced by the Commanders and the National Football League, including emails. What we found, what the evidence overwhelmingly established, what we will prove in court, is clear wrongdoing and violations of DC residents' consumer rights. The defendants lied about what they knew, and then they lied about what they were going to do about it, all in the service of protecting image and profit. First, we allege that Mr. Snyder lied to DC consumers when he denied knowing anything about the allegations of a hostile work environment and culture of sexual harassment. In fact, the evidence shows Mr. Snyder was not only aware of the toxic culture within his organization, he encouraged it and he participated in it. Mr. Snyder exerted a high level of personal control over everything the Commanders did, and his misconduct gave others permission to treat women in the same demeaning manner. Mr. Snyder dictated everything from which photos of cheerleaders were used in an annual swimsuit calendar to how revealing the uniforms would be. He directed his employees to create voyeuristic videos of partially clad cheerleaders from calendar shoots, from footage that the cheerleaders had no idea even existed. When Mr. Snyder was told about allegations of male executives and employees making unwanted sexual comments and propositions toward other employees, he was often dismissive. And you know the trick. He blamed repeatedly the victims. For example, when a longtime Commanders broadcaster was caught making inappropriate sexual comments, that's Mr. Michael, about a Commanders intern, Mr. Snyder shrugged it off, calling the man a sweetheart who wouldn't hurt anyone. In another incident, Mr. Snyder directed the firing of a cheerleader who had reported sexual misconduct by a player in order to minimize distractions from the players. There were no consequences whatsoever for the player who allegedly acted inappropriately. Despite all of the evidence of Mr. Snyder's knowledge of and participation in the hostile workplace culture, when news stories broke, Mr. Snyder falsely claimed he knew nothing about it. He did this in order to insulate himself from consequences, protect his image, and protect his profit. Mr. Snyder made public statements claiming he was unaware of these allegations until they surfaced in the media. He also claimed he had been too hands-off as an owner and allowed others to have day-to-day control over the team. These attempts to deflect attention away from himself and blame others do not stand the test of scrutiny. They're false statements designed to mislead the fans that Mr. Snyder needed to continue to make profits and to continue to burnish an image that was not squared off by the facts. Second, we allege that the National Football League and its commissioner, Roger Goodell, Mr. Snyder, and the Commanders misled the public about what was being done to address the allegations of harassment and the toxic culture that the Commanders maintained. They did all of this to hide the truth, protect their images, and let the profits continue to roll. In 2020, the Washington Post publicly reported a shocking broken team culture. One where sexual misconduct, harassment, and misogyny ran rampant for decades. Unsurprisingly, DC fans and the fans of the National Football League were outraged and wanted answers. Some fans even threatened, to this day, to boycott the team. Above all, fans, especially DC residents, just wanted to know the truth. Fearing that their image and profits were under threat, the Commanders and Mr. Snyder attempted to reassure fans by publicly launching an investigation into the allegations of sexual harassment and abuse. And after the public raised concerns about whether the team could credibly investigate itself, the National Football League claimed that they were stepping in to assume oversight. That led fans to believe the process would be independent of Mr. Snyder's influence. At the time, Mr. Snyder himself noted that this change in oversight would ensure, and I quote, "The results are thorough, complete, and trusted by the fans, the players, the employees, and the public." But this, of course, was all for show. In reality, the Commanders and the National Football League secretly entered into an agreement about the investigation that the public didn't know about. The public didn't know about the agreement that the National Football League and Dan Snyder entered into about the so-called independent investigation. This agreement enabled information about the investigation to be shared with Mr. Snyder and gave him the keys to determine what could and what could not be shared with the public. Furthermore, the National Football League turned a blind eye about the investigation to Mr. Snyder's attempts at preventing victims and witnesses from talking to investigators. The NFL even ignored Mr. Snyder's attempts to buy the silence of victims and witnesses through additional settlements and, of course, non-disclosure agreements. When the 10-month investigation was complete, the National Football League effectively buried the findings. The fans received a whopping 7 sentences, mostly reiterating what they already knew. So let's recap. We were led to believe that Mr. Snyder would not interfere with the independent, quote unquote, investigation. He did. We were led to believe that the public would not be left out of the process. We were. We were led to believe real change would happen. We're still waiting. I ask you, does any part of this investigation sound independent? Does any of this sound like accountability? Of course not. That's why we're suing